How do you mathematically prevent a single compromised employee account from destroying your entire corporate database? In this lesson, you will learn how. Welcome back to the Cybersecurity Masterclass, where we transition from establishing digital identity to strictly governing operational access. In our previous lesson, we built the architecture of defense using multi-factor authentication and network micro-segmentation. However, verifying the identity of a user is only the first step in constructing a resilient zero-trust corporate environment. Once a user or an artificial intelligence agent is authenticated, we must mathematically dictate exactly what they are allowed to do. This brings us to the principle of least privilege, the most critical operational doctrine in modern enterprise cybersecurity. The principle of least privilege dictates that any entity must be granted only the absolute minimum permissions necessary to perform its specific job, nothing more, nothing less, and those minimal permissions must be granted for the shortest possible duration required to execute the task. In legacy IT environments, organizations routinely violated this principle through a dangerous practice known as administrative over-provisioning. To save time and reduce IT support tickets, system administrators would grant employees broad, unrestricted access to vast corporate directories. A junior marketing analyst might be given read and write access to global financial databases simply because it was easier to provision. This culture of prioritizing operational convenience over strict cryptographic security creates an incredibly massive and highly vulnerable attack surface. If that junior analyst falls victim to a sophisticated phishing attack, the cybercriminal inherits those exact same over-provisioned privileges. The attacker bypasses the firewall, assumes the compromised identity, and freely navigates the network to exfiltrate highly sensitive, restricted data. By implementing the principle of least privilege, you mathematically restrict what is known as the attacker's blast radius. If an account is compromised, the damage is strictly confined to the specific, limited resources that particular account is authorized to access. The cybercriminal cannot move laterally to encrypt your primary backups because the compromised user account possesses zero authorization to view them. To execute this doctrine effectively, enterprise architecture must transition from static role-based access control to dynamic attribute-based access control. Traditional role-based systems grant permissions based strictly on a user's job title, which is often too broad and inflexible for modern enterprises. Attribute-based access control, or ABAC, evaluates multiple real-time contextual data points before authorizing any interaction with a secure database. It analyzes the user's identity, the specific device they are using, their physical geolocation, and the exact time of the access request. If a financial officer attempts to download quarterly earnings reports at 3 in the morning from an unrecognized IP address, access is instantly denied. Furthermore, the modern enterprise must entirely eliminate the concept of standing privileges, especially for high-level administrative accounts. Standing privileges mean an IT administrator possesses permanent, round-the-clock access to your most critical infrastructure, even when they are sleeping. This presents a massive, continuous vulnerability, as these high-level accounts are the primary targets for advanced persistent threat syndicates. The solution is just-in-time access, where administrative privileges are dynamically generated and granted only for the specific duration of an approved task. When the task is completed, or a strict time limit expires, the elevated privileges are automatically and cryptographically revoked by the system. This ensures that even if an administrator's account is compromised, the attacker finds a mathematically useless profile with zero standing access. But human employees are no longer the only entities navigating your digital infrastructure. We must address non-human identities. Your enterprise utilizes thousands of automated service accounts, microservices, and API keys that operate constantly in the background. As we discussed in the AI Vanguard series, You are also deploying autonomous artificial intelligence agents to execute complex corporate workflows. These non-human identities often possess far more extensive network access than your human workforce, making them devastating targets for compromise. The principle of least privilege must be applied with uncompromising rigor to every single API connection and autonomous software agent. You must never grant an AI agent broad administrative access to your enterprise resource planning software to simply draft an email. You must mathematically restrict its API access to the exact databases required for the task, enforcing a strict read-only policy whenever possible. If a multi-agent framework requires write access to alter a database, it must trigger a mandatory human-in-the-loop verification protocol. Implementing this level of granular, uncompromising control requires your IT security teams to conduct continuous automated privilege audits. In a dynamic corporate environment, employees change departments, take on new projects, and require temporary access to different data silos. Without continuous auditing, users inevitably accumulate a massive, dangerous collection of outdated permissions known as privilege creep. Your zero-trust architecture must automatically detect and revoke unused permissions, mathematically enforcing a state of continuous minimum access. Enforcing this doctrine requires significant executive support, as it fundamentally disrupts the legacy corporate culture of unrestricted digital freedom. Department heads will inevitably complain about increased friction and the perceived loss of immediate, unconditional access to enterprise resources. As a technical leader, you must systematically educate the organizational chart on the catastrophic financial risks of over-provisioned networks. You must demonstrate that least privilege is not an IT roadblock, but a vital corporate immune system designed to ensure operational continuity. It is the architectural difference between a minor, easily contained security alert and a globally publicized, multi-million-dollar ransomware disaster. To assist your engineering teams in operationalizing these strict access controls, I have published a comprehensive enterprise governance guide. This critical documentation details the exact cryptographic frameworks required to transition from static roles to dynamic, attribute-based access control. It provides secure architectural blueprints for implementing just-in-time privilege escalation protocols for your most critical IT infrastructure administrators. It also outlines the specific API governance rules required to safely deploy autonomous generative AI models within a corporate cloud environment. You can access this comprehensive least privilege documentation immediately in the professional GitHub repository linked directly in the video description below. I strongly encourage you to review these strict access matrices with your Chief Information Security Officer to audit your current directory permissions. Building the Vanguard requires an uncompromising, mathematical commitment to minimizing your corporate attack surface at every possible digital intersection. Master the continuous auditing of permissions, eliminate standing privileges, and you will effectively neutralize the primary vector of modern cyber warfare. The organizations that successfully implement these rigorous controls today will operate with unparalleled confidence in the hostile digital markets of tomorrow. In our next cybersecurity lesson, we will shift our focus to data protection, examining advanced encryption protocols and data loss prevention strategies. We will define the specific architectural frameworks required to secure your proprietary corporate data both at rest and in transit across global networks. Prepare your infrastructure for continuous privilege auditing, but remain fiercely vigilant about the reality of your current organizational access vulnerabilities. The digital vanguard belongs to those who architect security based on continuous verification and minimal access, not outdated convenience and implicit trust. Ensure your security engineering teams have thoroughly reviewed the GitHub documentation before we proceed to advanced encryption in the next module. Subscribe to continue the cybersecurity masterclass, download the least privilege GitHub framework below, and join the Vanguard. Thank you for your time.